5, starting in verse 13. Now it came about when Joshua was by Jericho that he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing opposite him with his sword drawn in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, "Are you for us or for our adversaries?" He said, "No. Rather, I indeed come now as captain of the host of the Lord." And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and bowed down and said to him, "What has my Lord to say to his servant?" The captain of the Lord's host said to Joshua, "Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy." And Joshua did so. This morning, what strikes me about Joshua is he's a man who followed instructions. He was a very obedient man, very obedient. If we go back to the first time we meet Joshua, it's in Exodus 17, and we've talked about this before. But if we go back to Exodus 17, verse 9, it says, "So Moses said to Joshua, 'Choose men for us and go out, fight against Amalek. Tomorrow I will station myself on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand.' Joshua did as Moses told him." And here we see in verse 15 of Joshua 5:15, it says, "And the captain of the Lord's host said to Joshua, 'Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place where you are standing is holy.' And Joshua did so." Earlier in the chapter, it says, "At that time the Lord said to Joshua," in verse 2 of chapter 5, "At that time the Lord said to Joshua, 'Make for yourself flint and knives and circumcise again the sons of Israel the second time.' So Joshua made himself flint and knives and circumcised the sons of Israel at Gibeah." What we know is then later the Lord tells Joshua, "See, I have given Jericho into your hand with its king." This is chapter 6. And the valiant warriors. "You shall march around the city, all the men of war circling the city once. You shall do so for 6 days. Also 7 priests shall carry 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. Then on the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. It shall be that when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, and when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people will go up, every man straight ahead." Do you know what's coming next? "So Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said to them, 'Take up the ark of the covenant and let the 7 priests carry 7 trumpets of ram horns before the ark of the Lord.' Then he said to the people, 'Go forward and march around the city, and let the armed men go on before the ark of the Lord.' And it was so that when Joshua had spoken to the people, the 7 priests carrying the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the Lord went forward, blowing the trumpets, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord followed them. The armed men went before the priests who blew the trumpets, and the rear guard came after the ark, while they continued to blow the trumpets." There's this repetitiveness with Joshua's life of he receives an instruction, he does it. He receives an instruction, he does it. He receives an instruction, he does it. And I love that about Joshua. I really, really love that Joshua is a man who follows instructions. And what I see is that Joshua's been following instructions for a long time. We see that in Exodus 33:11, it says, "Thus the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, just as a man speaks to his friend. When Moses returned to the camp, his servant, Joshua the son of Nun, a young man, would not depart from the tent." And we know that Joshua had been serving Moses for a long time, because he was a servant from his youth. We know for 40 years he served Moses. And so I have to imagine that if the character of his life has consistently been get in order, follow in order, get in order, follow in order, get in order, follow in order. And keep in mind, Exodus 17:9 occurs before we even get to Exodus 21, where we have the giving of the 10 Commandments. So this is before the Israelites were exiled, when we see the first time Joshua shows up. So the first time Joshua shows up, he's following instructions. And then he's in the desert for 40 years and he's following more instructions. But the amazing thing about Joshua is that following those instructions, we see it in Numbers 24:13. "So Moses arose with Joshua's servant, and Moses went up to the mountain of God." We talked about this before. Joshua got to go up to the mountain of God. Joshua got to lead an army into battle. Joshua got to go and sit in front of the tent of meeting when Moses wasn't there. Joshua got to be one of the 12 spies that went out and came back with a good report of the Lord. Joshua got to then become the leader of Israel. And I just see the effectiveness of following instructions. my struggle is that, and we've talked about this topic before, my struggle for me is the quickness of following instructions. What I see repetitively with him is, it's Joshua did as Moses told him. And we just see that repetitiveness with Joshua. Joshua did as Moses told him. That's from Exodus 17:9. In Joshua 5, we see, so Joshua made himself flint knives. At the end of the chapter, we see, and Joshua did so. In verse 6, we see, so Joshua the son of Nun called the priests. And we just see this repetitiveness of get a command, follow a command, get a command, follow a command, get a command, follow a command. Now, one of the keys to that is Joshua knew that the source of the command was godly, God-honoring, that it was in the way of God. So I'm not saying just if someone comes up to you and says, give me all your money, sell your house, give me all your money, that you should just do it. What I'm saying, though, is Joshua got instructions and followed instructions. And I think part of the key for me is there's no questioning. There's no second guessing. There's no, how is that going to work? It seems like when Joshua knew it was from a source of authority, when Joshua knew that it was from the Lord, he just did it. And I honestly don't do that. I really don't do that. Excuse me. I really don't do that. I don't do it that way. I usually seek the Lord. Once I get to seeking him, hear from the Lord. I get the instructions. I get the confirmations, and then I'm not quick. And I'm really working on trying to change that. But I just love the quickness of Joshua. I love how it says that he calls the priests and said to them, take up the ark. I love how he gives the instruction as if it's just a matter-of-fact thing. No caveats, no nothing. Now, I think it's wise for us to say things like, hey, I think this is the Lord. This could be the Lord. I think it's wise for us to encourage other people to discern for themselves. I think he was in a position of authority, though. And I think he used that authority. What positions of authority are you in? And are we receiving God's instructions and doing them? I can tell you for me, and I talk about me a lot because I'm hoping that these devotions are really just about me connecting with God and sharing with you what I think the Lord might be doing in my life. That's why I try to be really transparent. And I really only know my experience. So I've had what feels like a pretty crazy schedule this year. But I had a friend prophesy over me. I told him my schedule. And last year I had a friend prophesy over me last summer, about a year ago. And he said, I have a vision of you. And I see that your hair is on fire. It's like an electrical fire in your hair. But you're closer to God than you've ever been before. And what I've seen this year is this ebb and flow of getting really busy, but then God orchestrating events and times so that not only is life, as far as connection with him, closest to my family, growth, it's better, but then it seems to be manageable. And I think I need to start learning that if God really is saying to do something, I really have confirmation from the Lord to move forward with it. And I think there's things that I've missed because of that. I think there's opportunities that maybe I let go of because I remember when, before I'm in this season I'm in now, I had more time and the Lord was telling me to write, but I wasn't sure, how are we going to publish books? How are we going to get books out there? How is this ever going to be marketed? And so I would write, and then I would not write. And then I would write, and then I would not write. And the writing was fruitful for me. I was growing, I was changing, I was transforming. I would share what I'm writing with other people, and they're like, wow, that's good. But I just still had this block. And instead of just being obedient, Josh was not like, well, how's the wall going to fall? Like, how are we taking the city by marching around it? He doesn't ask that question. He just goes and does it. Well, it turns out that about 4 months ago, as a church, we decided to open a publishing company, Adapt Publishing. We're still working on getting the groundwork set up. We're still working on laying the foundation of it. This is June 21st, 2024. And we're really going to launch it next year. But I think about, if I'd just been obedient, I'd probably have like 2 manuscripts done by now. And when it was like, hey, we're going to publish books, I'd be like, great, I've got a couple manuscripts. How do I put them in the pipeline? And like, wow. I missed out on all that. Now, I think God's redeeming it. But I missed out on that opportunity because I knew the instruction of the Lord, and I knew it was God. But I was letting my questions, my fears, my doubts, and my worries come, and I wasn't going to him and trying to unite faith with hearing, leading to belief and obedience. Instead, I just stayed in my fear, and I just kept pushing it off. Where in your life today do you need to be obedient to God and move to a place of being quicker, where you know it's the instruction of the Lord? How do we become Joshua? How do we become Joshua? We haven't looked at Joshua's failures yet, but even in Joshua, there's a point where Josh fails. And Joshua fails because his men come back and tell him, there's this one city, we only need like 3,000 guys. We should just send like 3,000 guys. We'll take it out, no problem. So he sends 3,000 guys and they get defeated and about 49 of them die. So Israel's like, what just happened? And Joshua's pretty broken over it. Joshua's pretty struggling over it. Joshua says in Joshua 7:7, alas, O Lord God, why did you ever bring this people over the Jordan only to deliver us into the hand of the Amorites, to destroy us? If only we had been willing to dwell beyond the Jordan. O Lord, what can I say, since Israel has turned their back before their enemies? For the Canaanites and all the inhabitants of the land will hear of it, and they will surround us and cut off our name from the earth. And what will you do for your great name? You know what Joshua said? You know what God said to Joshua? So the Lord said to Joshua, rise up. Why is it that you have fallen on your face? God's like, what are you doing? Israel has sinned, and they have also transgressed my covenant, which I commanded them, and they have even taken up some things under the ban, and have been both stolen and deceived. Moreover, they have also put them among their own things. Therefore, the sons of Israel cannot stand before their enemies. They turn their backs before their enemies, for they have become accursed. I will not be with you anymore unless you destroy the things under the ban from your midst. Rise up, consecrate the people, and say, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow. For thus the Lord, the God of Israel, has said, there are things under the ban in your midst. O Israel, you cannot stand before your enemies until you have removed the things under the ban from your midst. In the morning, then you shall come, and then he goes into, God describes to him how he's going to go through the process. Do you know what it says in verse 16? God says, tomorrow morning you're going to do this. You know what it says in verse 16? So Joshua arose early in the morning and brought Israel near by tribes, and the tribe of Judah was taken. He does what God tells him to do even when he fails. Dude, who is this guy? He's us. He's us. I would love to see Joshua in his younger years. I would love to see Joshua when he was a kid. Was he this obedient? Did he learn this by watching Moses and see Moses be obedient to God and the fruit of obedience to the Lord? I don't know where Joshua learned it, but Joshua is still us. Don't forget that. He's still a man, but he's a man walking with his God. He's a man who's seen enough, and the Lord has, and he's stepped into the opportunity to have faith. The rest of Israel had fear, and they stepped into fear, and they listened to fear. What is fear? Fear is the flesh, the devil, and the world. That's fear. There's only one type of fear that's from God, and it's the fear of the Lord. Every other fear you're experiencing is the flesh, the devil, and the world. That's it. It's unbelief. It's a lack of faith. The opposite of faith is fear. So the rest of Israel steps into fear in the wilderness. They start listening to flesh, the devil, and the world. Joshua steps into faith. Joshua takes a risk. Joshua says, if God, it's really important. He first starts off and says, if God is for us, then they will be our prey. Then we will defeat them. And he said, God has given us the land. I love that he says, if God is for us. He qualifies it as a statement where he's like, if God is for us, then what are we concerned about right now? Help me understand the problem if God is for us. Here's the question today for us. Is God for you? Do you believe God is for you? Because I have not believed that God was for me. I've been a Christian for about, it's 2024. I've been a Christian for about 15 years. And I think in 14 of those years, I didn't believe God was for me. And I'm just maybe, possibly starting to understand that God is for me. And that changes everything. Joshua knew God was for him. So when he got an instruction from God, he went and did it. This morning, do you know that God is for you and not against you? Do you know that he has come to bring you hope and a future, not to harm you? Do you know the verse? It's Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for welfare and not for calamity, to give you a hope and a future. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me, and when you search for me you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will restore your fortunes. I will gather you from all the nations and from all the places where I've driven you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place from where I sent you to exile. Here's the thing. God was sending the people into exile because they wouldn't listen to him, they wouldn't follow him, they wouldn't obey him, they were worshiping idols. So he sent them into exile, but here's the promise for them. I know the plans. He knows the plans that he has for you, and it is to prosper you, and it's not to harm you. So what do? If I'm in a place where I'm like, honestly, if I'm honest with myself, I don't think the Lord is for me. I'm afraid of what will happen if I obey God. So then here's what you need to do. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. Search for him with all your heart. Are you searching for him with all your heart? What does that look like? Are you setting time aside where God knows that he needs to be there to meet with you? Are you setting time aside for the Lord? Are you making sacrifices in order to make that time with the Lord? Maybe it's getting up early. Maybe it's staying up late. Maybe it's not going out to lunch with people, but it's staying in your cube and praying. Maybe it's fasting while you pray. Maybe it's asking some friends if they can watch your kids for the night so that way you can go and pray and seek the Lord. Maybe it's going to your pastor, a friend you know is walking deeply with Christ, and saying, I need you to pray for me because I need to hear God. I need to know that he's for me. Because here's the promise. If we'll search for him with all our hearts, he says, then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. John tells us that what we hear from John is if he hears us, it's John 5, 1 John 5:15 says, and if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have what we asked of him. He'll listen to us. You will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. I will be found by you, declares the Lord. And then he talks about the restoration of Israel, and he'll restore your life and whatever's going on. I think part of the key to Joshua is that he knows that God is for him. And since he knows that God is for him, he follows the Lord's instructions. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you.